My mother tried to secretly make me fat again. My mother tried to fatten me up, poison my drinks with corn syrup, robbed me of my own money, and even brought a fake doctor into our home to gaslight me. She did all of this while not realizing that she had met her match. She failed to understand that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, and the daughter she raised to be a pushover had a spine of steel she never saw coming. No one really wants to admit it, but growing up as an only child with a single mom can be intense. It's a closed-off little world of two, and when one person in that world has a warped view of reality, it infects everything. For the first 14 years of my life, my mother's love was measured in calories. She put me on a steady diet of the most high-calorie, processed foods she could find. My childhood memories taste like freezer-burned chicken nuggets, greasy fast food burgers, and sugary Pop-Tarts for breakfast. Our pantry wasn't a place for ingredients. It was a museum of brightly colored boxes promising instant gratification and a sugar rush. As a direct result of her curated menu, I spent my 14th birthday as a 160-pound, 5 feet 2 inches girl, stuffed into clothes that were designed to hide, not flatter. I lived in a world of baggy hoodies and shame. Meanwhile, my mom was a ghost in our own kitchen. She was the same height as me but weighed a skeletal 95 pounds. Her diet was the polar opposite of mine, a curated collection of the healthiest, most expensive food she could find from the specialty grocery store. Her side of the fridge was filled with organic salads, perfectly ripe avocados, grilled shrimp, and containers of quinoa. It was like we lived in two different nutritional universes under the same roof. But other than that bizarre, glaringly obvious food dynamic, she was an angel. Seriously. She was the type of mom who would drive an hour out of town just to find the specific cartoon-themed birthday cake I wanted. The mom who would stay up all night, fingers raw, hand-sewing an elaborate Halloween costume for my school fair because the store-bought ones weren't good enough. She was my biggest cheerleader, my confidant, my everything. At least, she was, until I got my weight down to 105 pounds. You see, up until that point, I had been living my life under layers of fabric and self-loathing. I covered myself in the baggiest clothes I could find, even at home in the summer heat. You could barely even tell what my body looked like underneath it all, and that was the point. The shame was a constant companion. But I had been working in secret. For over a year, I'd used my lunch money to buy salads at the school cafeteria instead of the pizza my mom packed for me. I'd found workout videos on YouTube and would do them silently in my room after she went to bed, my muscles screaming in protest. I started walking everywhere, turning down rides from friends just to get the extra steps in. Slowly, painstakingly, the weight started to come off. When I finally saw the number 105 on the scale one morning, my eyes brightened. It felt like stepping out of a thick, heavy fog into the sunlight. I could finally wear my motivation clothes, a secret collection of outfits I'd bought over the years that would only fit me once I reached my goal. That morning, I picked out a fitted top and a pair of jeans that actually hugged my new shape. My hands were shaking a little as I got dressed. I practically tripped running down the stairs, my heart pounding with a nervous, giddy excitement. I was so eager to share the news with my mom. In my head, I had this perfect movie scene planned out. I'd tell her, she'd see how happy I was, and we'd jump up and down together, and she'd wrap me in a big, proud hug that smelled like her lavender perfume. But as soon as she saw me, her entire face changed. Her eyes widened with a look of pure, undiluted shock. And then, I swear I saw it, a flicker of disgust that flashed over her features before she could plaster on a fake smile. The air in the room went from warm and sunny to ice-cold in a fraction of a second. I just stood there awkwardly on the bottom step, my big, triumphant announcement dying in my throat. I quietly mumbled that I had lost 45 pounds. That's when my mom, the once most encouraging, kind, supportive woman to ever exist, looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on my waist and hips, gave me a tight, thin-lipped smile, and said, "Just don't let it get to your head." Then she turned her back on me, pulled a plate of toaster waffles from the toaster, drowned them in a horrifying amount of syrup and butter, and slid them in front of my usual spot at the table as if nothing had happened. Tears immediately stung my eyes, hot and sharp. I choked them back and told myself she was just having an off day. Maybe she was just shocked by the change, and it would take time for her to process it. But as the days turned into weeks, it got so much worse. She started loading up my plate with double, sometimes triple, the amount of food. If I had one scoop of mashed potatoes, she'd add another 2, saying, "You're too thin, you need to eat." She'd stand over me while I ate, her presence a heavy, suffocating weight. And when I refused to finish the mountain of pasta or the extra-large portion of casserole, she'd get this wounded, tearful look in her eyes. The guilt trips were constant and suffocating. One time, she even threatened to call my school and tell them I was cheating on my homework by copying from friends, a lie so bizarre and out of left field that I didn't even know how to react. She never followed through, of course, but the threat hung in the air between us, another brick in the wall she was building. The next 3 years were a Cold War fought over portion sizes and dinner plates. The house was filled with a constant, simmering tension. There were long stretches of the silent treatment, broken only by her passive-aggressive comments about my eating habits. Then came my 17th birthday. It was the first time I was allowed to have friends over for a real party, and I was absolutely ecstatic. I asked my mom if I could have a Halloween-themed birthday party, since my birthday falls in late October. To my shock, her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Yes, honey. Of course. Let me make the birthday cake. I insist." It was the first genuine smile she had given me in months. And I was so naive, so desperate for a return to normal, that I really thought her reign of jealousy, or whatever this was finally over. I had planned my costume for weeks. I was going to be Snow White, complete with a tight blue corset that showed off my waist, and a flowing yellow skirt. I was so excited to wear it, to feel beautiful for one night, that I put it on hours before any of my guests were due to arrive. I wanted to surprise my mom, to show her that I was the beautiful, happy daughter I thought she always wanted. I crept down the hallway, planning to make a grand entrance into the living room, but as I passed the kitchen, I heard a strange rustling sound. I peeked in, and what I saw made my heart almost grow legs and run right out of my chest. My mother was standing over the large bowl of chocolate cake batter, and she was pouring a fine white powder from a huge, industrial-looking black and red container directly into it. I recognized it instantly from the health food store. It was a mass gainer. The kind bodybuilders used to bulk up, the kind that adds a whopping 700 calories per tiny scoop. I must have made a sound, a sharp gasp or a horrified squeak, because she whipped around, her eyes wide with panic. I screamed. Startled, she jerked her hand, and the white powder went everywhere. A fine, chalky dust cloud that settled over the countertops, the floor, her clothes. Her face went beet red. She even looked a little ashamed, like a child caught with her hand in the cookie jar. But I didn't care about her shame. To me, in that moment, my birthday, my one night of feeling normal and pretty, had been completely and utterly ruined by her twisted sabotage. But then, something inside me snapped. A cold, quiet rage replaced the hurt and the shock. I didn't cry. I didn't yell at her. I just smiled, a wide, slightly unhinged smile. And I joked, my voice a little too light, a little too airy. "Wow, Mom. Thanks for helping me fatten up for the winter. So thoughtful of you." My mom thought she had raised a pushover. A girl who couldn't fight back, who would just cry and eat the damn calorie-laden cake. But she was wrong. And I was going to make damn sure she knew it. The party went ahead as planned. Mom, flustered and panicked, quickly wiped up the evidence of the mass gainer, stammering some pathetic excuse that she was just trying to add some extra protein to make the cake healthier. The lie was so transparent it was almost funny. She frantically threw together a new, presumably unspiked cake while I greeted my guests, plastering a smile on my face that felt like it was cracking my cheeks. And you can bet I made damn sure not to eat a single bite of anything she made that day. My friends were amazing. We played stupid Halloween games, took a ton of goofy pictures, and I actually managed to have fun, despite the dark, churning secret in my stomach. But every time I looked over and saw my mom smiling, playing the perfect, doting hostess, offering my friends slices of the safe cake, I felt sick to my stomach. That night, after everyone left and the house was quiet, I didn't cry. I sat in my room and I started planning. My mom had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I made a big show of walking to the bathroom scale while I knew she was in the nearby hallway, pretending to fold laundry. I stepped on it, waited a few seconds, and then let out a loud, dramatic gasp.
Mom.
"Mom, come look," I yelled, injecting fake panic into my voice. She rushed in, her face a perfect mask of fake concern. "Look," I said, pointing at the number. "I've gained 5 pounds since yesterday. It must have been all that party food." Her eyes lit up with a weird, sick satisfaction that made my skin crawl. "Oh, honey, it's probably just water weight," she said, but her smile was genuine for the first time in days. This confirmed everything. She wanted me fat. She was happy that I was, in her mind, failing. So, I started playing her game, but with my own set of rules. I became a master of deception. I'd wait until she was watching, then I'd make a big performance of grabbing a huge handful of chips or a sleeve of cookies from the pantry, telling her how ravenous I was. Then I'd take the food to my room or into the bathroom and meticulously flush it down the toilet or hide it in a trash bag in my closet that I'd sneak out to the bins late at night. I'd come back out for more, patting my stomach and talking about how good it was. It was a twisted, wasteful charade, but it was my only weapon against her silent war. Meanwhile, I became a secret agent in my own home. I started keeping a detailed journal. I documented everything. Every backhanded compliment about my body. "You're looking healthier," which was her code for fatter. Every time she tried to force an extra portion on me, every special, high-calorie dessert she insisted on making just for me. I started taking pictures with my phone. Pictures of the ridiculously oversized plates of food she served me compared to her own meager salads. I had a growing file of evidence. I had to get sneaky with my workouts. I told her I was joining after-school study groups, but really, I was going to the school gym or for long runs in the park, coming home sweaty and claiming the school's heating was broken. One rainy Saturday, I was cleaning out my closet to make more room for my hidden trash bags of uneaten food, and I found a dusty box of old family photo albums. I started looking through them, curious about what my mom looked like when she was my age. And that's when I found it. The key to the whole twisted puzzle. In all of her high school photos, my mom was heavy, heavier than I had ever been. In her senior portrait, she looked sad and uncomfortable in her own skin, nothing like the thin, controlled, almost severe woman who raised me. I dug deeper and found pictures of her with a man who had my eyes and my smile. It had to be my dad. In those photos, she was still heavy, but she looked genuinely, radiantly happy. Then the photos stopped for a few years. When they picked up again, she was suddenly bone-thin, holding a baby, me, and she was completely alone. It was like a light bulb went off in my brain. This wasn't just about me. This was about her. Her own trauma, her own deep-seated issues with weight. I remembered all the weird comments she'd made over the years about not wanting me to suffer like she did. I always thought she meant financially, since we sometimes struggled. I decided to try a different approach. The next morning at breakfast, I casually mentioned the photos. "Mom, you looked so happy in those old pictures with Dad. What happened between you two?" She froze, her coffee cup halfway to her mouth. I expected her to get angry, to shut me down, but instead, her face just crumpled, the carefully constructed mask falling away. "Your father left me when I was pregnant with you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "He said he didn't want to be tied down to a fat girl and her baby." The confession hit me like a physical blow. I had never, ever heard the real story about my dad. It was always vague excuses about him not being ready for a family. Is that why you lost all the weight?" I asked, my voice gentle. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a pain that was decades old, and nodded slowly. I promised myself no one would ever have a reason like that to leave me again. But why me? I pressed, my voice still soft. Why make me eat differently? Why try to keep me heavy? Tears started rolling down her cheeks, dripping into her black coffee. "I just wanted to protect you," she sobbed. "Boys can be so cruel about weight. I thought if you were heavy, they wouldn't notice you. You'd be safe. They wouldn't hurt you like your father hurt me." I sat there, completely stunned. Her logic was so twisted, so fundamentally broken, but in a strange, horrifying way, I could almost see the path her traumatized mind had taken to arrive at this bizarre form of protection. "Almost. Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You can't protect me by making me unhealthy. And now I feel like I can't even trust you around my food." She started crying harder, and for a brief, hopeful moment, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe this was the breakthrough. Now that everything was out in the open, she'd see the damage she was doing and she would stop the sabotage. I was wrong. So wrong. The conversation should have been a turning point, the kind you see in movies. But real life isn't a movie. The very next day, I noticed my orange juice at breakfast tasted off. Not spoiled, just different. Cloyingly sweet. I took another sip and saw my mom watching me from across the table, her eyes wide and expectant. That's when it clicked. I pushed the glass away. "Did you put something in this?" I asked, my voice flat. "Just a little honey to sweeten it up, sweetie." "I know you like sweet things," she replied, her voice dripping with fake innocence. I dumped the rest down the sink when her back was turned. Later that day, I searched through our pantry and found a half-empty bottle of corn syrup hidden behind her expensive organic tea collection.
Great.
Now, she wasn't just manipulating me, she was literally spiking my drinks with pure sugar. The psychological warfare escalated. That weekend, she insisted on making my favorite lasagna, which somehow had twice as much cheese as usual and tasted oddly sweet. When I only took a small portion, she actually teared up. "I spent hours making this special for you," she said, her voice trembling. The guilt trip was real. I felt like I was trapped in some bizarre psychological experiment. My own mother was basically trying to force-feed me like the witch in Hansel and Gretel. I was drowning, and I needed a lifeline. So, I turned to the only place I could think of: Reddit. I anonymously posted my situation on a relationship advice forum. The replies flooded in. Most people were horrified, calling her actions abusive and telling me to call CPS or move out immediately. Easy for them to say. I was still 17 with no money and nowhere to go. But one comment from a user named Health Coach Linda stood out. She suggested that instead of fighting my mom directly, I should try enlisting an ally, preferably a family member my mom respected, who could help talk some sense into her. I thought about it. The only person who might fit that description was my Aunt Tricia, my mom's older sister. They weren't super close, but I knew my mom respected her. Tricia was a successful real estate agent, and my mom always spoke about her with a weird mix of pride and envy. I found her number in my mom's old address book and nervously dialed it the next day while my mom was at work. When she answered, I almost hung up, but I forced myself to explain the whole sordid situation, from the weight loss to the mass gainer cake to the corn syrup in my juice. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then Aunt Tricia's voice practically exploded through the phone. Your mother's doing what? She was silent for a moment, and I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head. Then she said, I'm coming over this weekend. Don't tell your mom I'm coming. That Friday evening, a car pulled into our driveway. Mom wasn't expecting anyone, so she peeked through the curtains and her face went white. Tricia? What's she doing here? She muttered, a note of panic in her voice. Aunt Tricia barely waited for my mom to open the door before barging in, her energy filling the tense house. We need to talk, Diane, she announced, dropping her overnight bag in the hallway. Family dinner. All three of us. Now. I had never seen my mom so flustered. She kept stammering excuses about not having enough food prepared, but Aunt Tricia just rolled her eyes and started rummaging through our fridge herself. During dinner, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Aunt Tricia waited until we were all seated before she dropped the bomb. So, Diane, your daughter tells me you've been trying to fatten her up. Care to explain what the hell that's about? My mom's fork clattered onto her plate. She shot me a look of pure betrayal that made me want to disappear into the floor. I don't know what she told you, she stammered, but I'm just trying to make sure she's eating enough. Teenagers these days are obsessed with being skinny. Cut the crap, Diane, Aunt Tricia said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a stack of old photographs, pictures of my mom as a teenager, looking miserable and overweight. Remember how Dad used to comment on your weight at the dinner table every single night? Remember how Mom put you on those awful crash diets, the cabbage soup one that made you sick? You're doing the same thing to your daughter, just in reverse. I sat there in shock as they argued, revealing a family history of body shaming and disordered eating I'd never heard before. Apparently, my grandparents had been pretty terrible about my mom's weight growing up. You hated them for it, Aunt Tricia said, her voice softening just a little. And now you're doing something just as harmful to your own daughter. For a moment, I thought we were having another breakthrough. My mom's eyes filled with tears, and she looked genuinely remorseful. But then she stood up suddenly, knocking her chair backward. This is different. I'm protecting her. By making her unhealthy? By betraying her trust? That's not protection, Diane. That's control. Tricia shot back. My mom stormed out of the room, slamming her bedroom door so hard the pictures on the hallway wall rattled. Aunt Tricia sighed and turned to me. Well, that went about as well as I expected. She ended up staying the entire weekend. My mom barely left her room. Before Tricia left on Sunday, she hugged me tightly at the door. I'm sorry I couldn't fix this, she whispered, but I want you to have this. She pressed a prepaid credit card into my hand. There's $500 on it. It's an emergency fund. Call me anytime, day or night. I felt a surge of gratitude, but also a wave of panic as I watched her car pull away, leaving me alone with a silent, simmering rage in my mother's bedroom. My mom emerged about 10 minutes later. Her eyes were red and puffy, but there was a new hardness there. Tricia always was a drama queen, she said flatly. Always trying to turn people against me. The next few weeks were the most stressful of my life. My mom stopped the obvious food tampering, but she started something way worse. Psychological warfare. She'd leave women's fitness magazines around the house, conveniently open to articles about the dangers of anorexia. She'd make comments whenever I skipped dessert like, I hope you're not developing an unhealthy relationship with food. The gaslighting was driving me insane. I'd catch her adding extra butter to my vegetables when she thought I wasn't looking, and when I'd confront her, she'd deny it completely. You're getting paranoid, honey. Maybe we should talk to someone about that. I started keeping all my own food in a plastic bin in my closet. One night, I came home late from studying at the library to find my mom sitting in the kitchen with a middle-aged woman with a serene smile and way too much turquoise jewelry. Honey, this is Dr. Reynolds, Mom said sweetly. She's a nutritionist who specializes in teenage eating disorders. My stomach dropped to my feet. I don't have an eating disorder, I said through gritted teeth. Why don't we just chat for a bit? Dr. Reynolds said gently. Your mother is just concerned. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat down and listened as this woman, who I later found out wasn't even a real doctor but some holistic nutrition coach my mom found on the internet, lectured me about intuitive eating, all while my mom nodded along with a pained, concerned look on her face. After the fake doctor left, I confronted my mom. What was that? I'm worried about you, she said with fake sincerity. You're hiding food, skipping meals. These are warning signs. The only reason I'm doing that is because you keep trying to make me fat again. I finally blurted out. Her expression darkened.
See?
This obsession with weight isn't healthy. Dr. Reynolds thinks you might need more intensive help. A chill ran down my spine. Was she threatening to send me to some kind of treatment center? Could she even do that? I didn't wait to find out. That night, I used the last of my phone's data to text Aunt Tricia. Things getting worse. Mom bringing in fake doctors now. The next morning, I changed my tactics. Fighting her directly wasn't working. I needed to be smarter. Mom, I said at breakfast, pushing my cereal around my bowl. Maybe you're right. I think I have been a little obsessive about food lately. The look of pure, unadulterated triumph on her face was almost worth the lie. Almost. Oh, sweetie, I'm so glad you realized that, she said, immediately popping 2 Pop-Tarts in the toaster for me. We'll get through this together. For the next few weeks, I played the part of the compliant daughter. I ate the massive portions she served. I smiled through her nutrition lessons. I even agreed when she suggested I stop exercising so much. But as soon as her back was turned, I was on my phone, researching and making plans. I found out that in our state, I couldn't legally move out until I turned 18 without her consent. But my 18th birthday was just 4 months away. I needed to prepare. I applied for every college scholarship I could find, focusing on schools at least 2 states away. I started selling old clothes on Poshmark for extra cash. I even picked up a secret weekend job at the Pretzel World in the mall, telling my mom it was a teen social skills group recommended by the school counselor. My best friend Zoe was my co-conspirator. She helped me set up a separate bank account that my mom didn't know about. By my estimation, I'd have almost $2,000 saved by graduation, plus Aunt Tricia's emergency card. I had a plan. I had a way out. Then one Saturday afternoon, disaster struck. I came home early from my social skills group, actually my shift at Pretzel World, because I had a splitting migraine. The house was supposed to be empty. But as I walked upstairs to my bedroom, I heard rustling coming from inside. I pushed open the door to find my mom kneeling on my floor, going through my closet, the contents of my secret food been dumped out around her. She was holding my bank statements in her hand. "What is all this?" she demanded, waving the papers in my face. "You're working at Pretzel World? And what's this bank account I don't know about?" My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. "Mom, I can explain. You're planning to leave," she said, her voice eerily calm. Which was so much scarier than yelling. "You're hiding money and food and making secret plans behind my back." I didn't deny it. What was the point? She'd found everything. "I'm almost 18, I said quietly. "I need to start being independent." She laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "Independent? You're still a child. You can't even make healthy food choices without my help." That night, my mom took my phone, my laptop, even my library card. "Until you can prove you're making healthy choices, these are off limits," she announced. She also informed me that she'd called Pretzel World and told my manager I had to quit for health reasons. I felt completely and utterly trapped. No phone, no computer, no job, no way to contact anyone in the outside world. She even started driving me to and from school, waiting in the parking lot to make sure I actually went inside and didn't try to run away. For 3 days, I went through the motions like a zombie. I ate whatever she gave me, nodded at her lectures about nutrition, and tried to figure out a new plan. The weight of the situation felt crushing. On the 4th day, my English teacher, Miss Garcia, held me back after class. "Everything okay, Amber?" she asked, her kind eyes full of genuine concern. "You don't seem like yourself lately." Something in her simple, kind expression broke me. I started crying right there in the empty classroom, ugly, gasping sobs. Between sobs, I told her everything. The food tampering, the control, the fake doctor, the isolation. Miss Garcia listened without interrupting, her expression growing more and more serious. When I finally finished, she handed me a box of tissues and said, "This isn't normal or healthy parenting, Amber. This is abuse. And there are resources that can help." She let me use her classroom phone to call Aunt Tricia during my lunch break. When I explained what had happened, that mom had found everything and put me on lockdown, Aunt Tricia was furious. "This has gone too far," she said, her voice tight with anger. "I'm calling a family meeting. Your grandmother needs to hear about this." Grandmother? I barely knew my grandmother. She lived in Florida and sent me $25 Target gift cards for Christmas. According to my mom, they weren't close because Grandma was judgmental. Now I was starting to understand why. 2 excruciating days later, my grandmother's big Lincoln Town car pulled into our driveway, followed closely by Aunt Tricia's SUV. I watched from my bedroom window as the 2 women marched up to our front door like an intervention squad. My mom completely fell apart when she saw her mother. It was like watching someone transform from a controlling adult into a defensive teenager in the span of 5 seconds flat. "Mother, this isn't a good time," she stammered, blocking the doorway. Grandma Margaret wasn't having it. She was a tiny woman, maybe 5 feet tall, but she had this presence that filled the entire porch. "Diane Marie," she said, her voice sharp as glass, "you open this door right now, or I swear to God I will call every neighbor on this street to witness this." The family showdown that followed was both horrible and deeply vindicating. We all sat in the living room while Aunt Tricia outlined everything I'd told her, with me filling in the details when asked. Mom kept trying to interrupt with her twisted version of events, that I was developing an eating disorder, that I was paranoid, that she was just a concerned mother trying to help. Grandma Margaret finally held up her hand, silencing everyone. She looked at my mother, her eyes filled with a sad, weary disappointment. "Diane," she said, "do you remember what you said to me when you were 17, after I threw out your snacks? You said if you ever had a daughter, you would never, ever do to her what I did to you." My mom's face crumpled. "This is different," she whispered. "No, it's not," Grandma said. "It's worse. I controlled your food because that's what mothers did in my generation. We didn't know any better. But you're doing it deliberately out of your own fear, to keep her dependent on you, and to stop her from growing up." For the first time, my mom didn't have a comeback. She just sat there, tears streaming down her face, finally defeated. Grandma turned to me next. "Amber, I owe you an apology too. I should have been more present in your life. I let old conflicts and my own pride keep me away, and you suffered for it. I am so sorry." That night, they worked out a plan. A non-negotiable plan. I would finish my senior year living with Aunt Tricia. My mom would start therapy, real therapy, not some holistic coach from Craigslist, to work through her deep-seated issues. We would try family sessions together, but only once her therapist thought she was ready. As I packed my things, my mom stood in my doorway, looking lost and small. "I really thought I was protecting you," she said quietly. I paused, a stack of t-shirts in my hands. "I know you believe that," I said, my voice softer than I expected. "But Mom, you can't protect someone by controlling them. That's not love." She nodded slowly, the fight finally gone from her eyes. "I'm sorry, Amber," she whispered. "I really am." I wanted to believe her. Part of me did. But trust is like a mirror. Once it's broken, you can't just tape it back together and pretend you don't see the cracks. When I carried my suitcases downstairs, Aunt Tricia was waiting. As we loaded my stuff into her car, I felt this weird, dizzying mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, hope, and a healthy dose of fear. "You know," Aunt Tricia said as we pulled away from the only home I'd ever known, "your mom isn't a monster. She's a person who never dealt with her own trauma and ended up passing it on to you." I watched my house disappear in the side mirror. "Do you think she'll ever really change?" I asked. Aunt Tricia sighed. "I don't know, honey. But here's what I do know. You broke the cycle. You recognized what was happening was wrong, and you fought back. That takes incredible strength." As we drove toward my new, temporary home, I thought about everything that had happened. My mom had tried to shape me with her own fears, using food as a weapon and trust as a bargaining chip. But I hadn't let her win. I'd found my voice. I'd found my allies. I'd stood up for myself. The road ahead was uncertain. But for the first time, it felt like my own. I wasn't the pushover she thought she'd raised. I was a survivor.